And welcome to Cadre's webinar, Using the Zoom Platform to Conduct Online Mediations. I'm Dr. Melanie Reese, the Director of Cadre. Thank you to the listserv folks, the mediation participants who suggested that we do this demonstration. We hope that you find it instructive in your practice. Today's demonstration will be led by John Gaffney. John is an attorney who mediates special education cases for the Illinois State Board of Education. John has been an attorney for 30 years and is a self-proclaimed huge fan of alternative dispute resolution. Joining John and me will be guest Sherry Colegrove, Mediation and Facilitation Coordinator for the Illinois Board of Education, and contracted mediators Willie Stewart and Breen-Greco and Randall Reese. Go ahead and get started. So the objectives of today's presentation, we'll be talking about setting up Zoom meetings, and John will be doing a demonstration and provide some helpful hints. And then we are going to have an open discussion and tips from guests as we talk about their experience in mediating online. And then we're going to provide some additional resources for you. So start a Zoom meeting. You need to have a Zoom account. So you would click on the Sign In tab once you set up your Zoom account at www.zoom.us. And this is what the sign in would look like. You'd enter your email and your password. Once you get logged in, you can have some options. You can either schedule a meeting, you can join a meeting, or you can host a meeting. So we'll talk first about scheduling a meeting in advance. So when you schedule a meeting in advance, it would be for a date in the future. So you would click on the Schedule a Meeting button. When you are registering or you're setting up the options for the Zoom meeting, you have some choices that you can make to have some added security. And one is to require the participants to register for the mediation, or and you can also have them do a password that you would set for the mediation. Once you have decided what your options are, you would hit save and it would take you to the next screen. You will then need to send invitations to the participants, and there is on the next screen it has a button for copy the invitation. So you would just cut and paste, and you could send invitations via email, and this is what the email would look like to the meeting participants. You would cut and paste this and then send that in an email. The second option that you have is to just host a meeting on the spot. So once you are logged in, you could click on the tab Host a Meeting and choose the With Video On section with the drop-down menu. From here, you can do the same thing in terms of identifying the options for the meeting itself, whether you want to have participants register, and whether or not you want a meeting password. If you have a registration, the registration information will be presented to you here. So it says that people are required to register before joining this meeting, and it has a registration URL that you would send out in advance to participants. When participants go to sign on to the meeting, they will see a place for them to enter the password that you've sent them. If you are just hosting a meeting and you haven't set it up ahead of time, you can invite participants from the board itself. So once you get signed into the meeting and the meeting loads, you can click on the invite button on the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Be aware that the bottom of the Zoom screen where the information is disappears if your mouse is not hovering over it. So don't get confused if you lose the menu bar at the bottom. So you can click Invite, and then you have options on how you want to invite folks. You can go to your contact lists, but you can also go to email and just send them an email link in order to invite participants. This is what the invitation looks like. So this is an email I sent to my son to invite him to a mediation. So it mentions name, hi Braden, thanks for registering. Please contact me if you have any questions. And here's the password. The password in this case is the word test, and offers them the opportunity to add it into their Google Calendar or their Yahoo Calendar or their Outlook Calendar. When you're getting started, be sure to unmute yourself. I know this from my own mistakes of starting a mediation or starting a presentation and not having my mute button off. So, and you also need to start your video. This slide, I'm not going to go over this, but this is for participants, making sure that they understand how to download Zoom. They have to have it in an app. They have to have it downloaded in order for them to participate. They can either go, if they have a Mac, they go through Apple ID or Google Play to do that, or if they're on a laptop, they can go through the Zoom meeting link, and it will help, it will guide them through setting up the system. But it's very helpful if you add this information in an email to them to make sure that they understand what they need to do in order to be able to participate in the meeting. Very quickly, and John's going to go over this, but meeting rooms or breakout rooms are something that's very helpful within the Zoom platform. And it allows for mediators to engage in caucusing without having all of the participants privy to all the conversation. So I'm going to just show you how to do a breakout room and how to invite people and set up those breakout rooms. And then John is going to demonstrate that in a mediation demonstration here. So the breakout room, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, you just click on that breakout room and then you assign people to the rooms. So I only had one participant in this demonstration. So I would assign one participant to one room and I will create a room. So in order to participate, I have a breakout room number 1, and I could hit assign, and it'll list all the people who are in my meeting, and I can click on that person's name to assign them to a particular meeting room. Once the meeting room has been set up, Braden has not joined this room yet, but then I can also join the meeting in the breakout room. So with that, before I move on, I am going to ask the participant, the other folks on the call here, is there anything that I missed or rushed through or didn't represent well that you think needs a little more explanation?
What you covered is just fine, Melanie.
Anne?
Yeah, it really was excellent. I just wanted to be clear. Did I hear you say that in order to get the breakout rooms, people have to sign up for the Zoom Pro? They can't do it on the free Zoom.
They cannot.
Right, mediators.
Have a paid account.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to be clear on that. The other thing that I now do also, when I am scheduling my meeting, in the scheduling, you can create your rooms. And I am now creating 3 rooms. I'm not assigning them. That's different. That's what we do when we're in the mediation and click the breakout button. But I'm saying also when you're scheduling, you can order 3 rooms. And I find that helpful.
Oh. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you. And John, show us how it's done.
Well, and Melanie, if you can do me a favor, you can stop sharing. We'll get everybody back up on the screen there. Good morning, everybody. So what I'm going to do very briefly is I'm just going to sort of run through a live fire exercise of how to set up a Zoom meeting. Before I start, I did want to say thank you to Sherry Colegrove, who is the coordinator for the ISBE Mediators. Sherry has done a yeoman's job in putting all this together over the past couple of weeks. And Sherry, I think all of the mediators really appreciate the hard work that you put in to put all this together. So I did want to say thank you to Sherry for that. So what we'll do now,
John.
what we'll do is I'll take
really.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's really teamwork. We've all worked together these past weeks to make this work. But thank you for leading the discussion today and sharing what all of us have learned together by practicing in our groups, volunteering your time, practicing Zoom with your families and friends across the country to learn more. And, also thanks to the mediators that are here today, Willie and Anne, and John, of course, and to those who couldn't make it, Andrea Becker, and Chris Bastoni, Lisa Hannum, Jay Craning, Kim Kern, and Marsha Irwin. we've all done a collective effort to get this up and rolling, and I'm really proud of the group that I'm working with. And Special Education Solutions with Day Study, Merced and Lynn Beekman helped put a little polish on our Zoom meetings last week when we were in training and got to spend more time practicing. So it's really all of us together, and I appreciate everybody doing their part with this. So thanks.
Could I just mention at this time, because I found it helpful, Sherry, I believe you developed two different printouts for us. I now have them on my computer about tips for when you're conducting the mediation. I don't know if you're making those available, but I found them very helpful, and I keep them so I can review them for my mediations.
We will be covering those at the end of the presentation, actually, so thank you, Anne, for bringing those up. Preview of things to come.
Okay, if we're ready to go, what we'll do is this. I'm going to take Willie and Randy are going to be for the district, and then Melanie, Sherry, and Ann will be representing the parents in this scenario. So we've gotten to this point. Obviously, you'll need to set up the meeting, join the meeting, and all. We won't go through the process of getting into that. But what I'd like to show everybody to start with, just a couple of things you want to think about when you're hosting these meetings. If you look down where I'm pointing right here, it says Manage Participants. If you click on that, that's going to give the host a list of everybody that's involved. And something that's important to notice is that there's a little microphone and a little camera next to everybody's name. If you click on that, for instance, if I click on Randy's microphone, it'll mute him, and it'll show a red slash through it. And then I can also turn off Randy's camera. And then he essentially disappears. That's important in order to keep control over the meeting, over people talking over one another. And then you can go back in and you can ask him to start his video, and you can unmute him. Randy, are you back? Welcome back, Randy. Your audio is working okay, Randy?
I believe so.
Great.
Can you hear me?
I can. I just wanted to make sure. So that's important when you're in a meeting, to be able to control the participants. One of the worst things about Zoom is when everybody talks together, because there's lag time. So you may have noticed when you're talking to other people, and when we did our training with Lynn and Day Steady last week, that tends to, it chops things up. So what you can do is, and what I often do in mediations, I explain to the parties ahead of time, is look, I'm going to mute everybody. And then if you need to say something, raise your hand, I'll unmute you and we can go to you. Except when we get to the point, as I'll explain, of we've got an agreement and we're collaborating on a final document. Then I'll have everybody talking at the same time, because it's a little bit more collaborative. So what I will do right now, Ann is muted and Sherry is muted. What I will do is go to the section here called breakout rooms, and Melanie had talked about that. Basically, with the breakout room, that's where you create a room, pardon me, to caucus with the parties, and it's probably the absolute best feature in Zoom for conducting mediations. The ones that I've done that we've been successful with, we've used the breakout rooms to separate the parties to talk about things privately, and it works out very, very well. So one thing I'm going to do is let's run through opening up a breakout room. What will you do? And it's also important to note, only the host has this function. So if the school district is the one who is hosting the meeting, the school district is the only person who can do that, unless the school district turns over control of the meeting or hosting of the meeting to someone else. And I'll show you that very briefly. If you look at, I'll pick Ann's name here. If you've got the unmute button and then you've got more, if you click on more, it's going to give you chat, stop video, spotlight video, and then something that says make host. If you click on make host, it'll ask Ann if she wants to become the host, and then it will change over that function to Ann. Once that is done, then you will have the ability to do a breakout room, because that can only be done by the host. So when you click on breakout room, it gives you a choice. I've got 5 participants. You guys can't see it on your screen, but I can see it from this part, and it's being recorded. You get to pick how many rooms you want, and then you've got a choice of automatically assign and manually assign. Really, really important. Always make sure that you click on manually assign, or else it's just going to put all the participants in a room automatically, and you don't know if you've got district people in a room with parents and parents advocates and attorneys. So I always click on manual for that. And then normally what I've been doing to this point is opening 2 rooms, but Lisa Hannum, who's another mediator here in Illinois, had an awesome idea that I've adopted, which is to open 3 rooms. And the reason for that is, although generally you only need to separate people into 2 rooms, if you open 3 rooms, if you've got an attorney or an advocate, or you need to talk to the attorneys separately, which often happens in my mediations, you've got the attorneys sort of going at each other, and it's time to get them to cool down a little bit. You can put them in the 3rd room away from everybody else, and then read them the riot act. That was a suggestion that I had gotten from Lisa Hannum, and I think that's an awesome suggestion. So I'm going to, once you've got the number of rooms you want, you click on create rooms. What that's going to do is that brings up, you won't be able to see it on your screen as participants, but it brings up all 3 breakout rooms, and then it says assign. So what you can do is you click on breakout room number 1, we'll call that the district room, and I'm going to assign Willie, and I'm going to assign Randy to that room. Then I'm going to go to breakout room number 2, and I'm going to assign Ann, Melanie, and Sherry to that room. So now if you look on the screen, what you can see are breakout room number 1 are the district participants, breakout room number 2 are all of the parents and parent advocate participants. So at that point, you're all ready to go. What you will do, and this is something important to note, if you look on the screen, you'll see at the bottom here, it shows add a room and open all rooms. One of the functions of Zoom is that you cannot add a room after you've established your room. You would have
So John,
yes, ma'am.
I need to let you know that we as participants and not hosts do not have access to the same visual that you do. We are just seeing you.
I apologize. Maybe what I can do is, I think we tried this yesterday. I'll try and share the screen so you can see that. I am recording from this end, so ultimately this will be what everyone sees. Let me try and share my screen and see if we can get that.
Okay.
I know we had some issues with that yesterday.
It's okay if the recording is going to show your screen, that's fine.
Yeah, it will. And so if you don't mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing that screen, simply because all it does is it takes all of you guys off. Can you guys see that?
We see your Mountain Wonderland.
Okay, that was the issue we had yesterday.
Yes.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing on that. The recording will have this because what it's recording is what I'm seeing.
Sure.
So,
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Melanie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit open all rooms. So once I open all the rooms, the participants are going to see something on that screen that invites you to go to your room. So if everybody wants to click on that, I will join you in the rooms in just a second. Okay, Randy's popped out. Ann's popped out. And then Willie, there should be something there that says join a room.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and click on that. Great. So then what you'll see is all the participants are in their separate rooms. Randy's jumped back out of his room, which you can do. You can jump in and out of the rooms. Good morning, Randy. You can jump in and out of rooms, but it always takes you back to the main room. It doesn't take you back to the other room. So what I'm going to do is, Randy, if you can go back into breakout room number 1, I'll join you and Willie over there for a minute.
Okay. Do I click leave meeting?
No, actually what you should do is there should be a button there for the breakout room that says join.
Okay. I'm not seeing that.
Oh, okay. Hang on just a quick second here.
I think because I already joined and came back, it went away.
No problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move you to that room again. Actually, what I'll do is I'll move you to breakout room number 2, and then I'll move you back to breakout room number 1.
Okay.
So you should be able to join there. Did it invite you?
No, it did not.
Oh, I apologize, Randy.
All right.
You know, let me go jump into the room and see if I can pull you in from there. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Hello, Willie. Can't hear you, Willie. You got to turn your mic up. So what we've got now is we're in room number 1. And what I can do from here is I can go back and pull the other participants. Hang on just a second here. I can pull the other participants into the meeting. So I've got Willie here. I've got myself there. And then I'm going to go to breakout room number 2. So I'm going to leave here. And we're going to join room number 2.
To register their
Hi,
email.
guys.
Hi there.
Right. Hi.
How are
Hi,
you?
John.
So we're in
Oh.
breakout room number 2 now. I'm just showing the function where you can jump back and forth between rooms. I think I have stranded Randy in the main room because he jumped out of the room.
Oh.
I'll try and get him back into room number 1. But basically, that shows the functionality of the breakout rooms, how that works, and how you can talk to participants. When you're in a breakout room, the other side cannot hear you, the other side cannot see you, and the other side cannot chat. There is, if you look on the bottom of your screen, there's a chat feature. When you click on that, that allows you to chat with whomever is in the room with you. So I can send a private message to everyone in the room, or I can send a private message to Anne, Melanie, or Sherry. That's often a helpful feature if you've got something you need to, you know, if somebody's mic is off and you're muted, you can send them a quick note that says, hey, your mic is off, or your video is laggy, or something like that. Like Sherry's video just got laggy. So you can,
Yeah.
that's a nice way to be able to talk to different participants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close all of the rooms, and we're all going to pop back into the main room. So what will happen now is once I hit close all rooms, you have 60 seconds to click on the button to get back into the main room, or Zoom automatically puts you back there. So
I do have a question. So Anne was earlier saying that she sets up rooms in advance to use. When you close rooms, are those rooms still available, or are they?
When you close all of your rooms, the answer is yes and no. The rooms are always available until you close the meeting. So what happens when you close a room is all the rooms close, everybody goes back to the main room. But then you also have the option as the host to reopen the room.
I see.
So that everybody can go back into their breakout rooms.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to breakout room number 1 again. Randy just got back in. So I'm going to talk to them for a minute, and then I'll close all the rooms in about 40 seconds, and we'll all go back to the meeting.
When you broadcast you're closing the meeting, I was practicing that too in the last few days.
Good for you. You're getting awesome at this, Ann. You really are. You're doing really well with this.
Well, let's see what happens, John. Thank you for your
I'll be right back, guys. Hey guys, how are you?
Hi.
You got back. Now, Randy, can I ask you, how did you get back in? I wasn't seeing from this side what you
I went to more, and it said join breakout room.
Ah, perfect. Okay, so if you accidentally jump out of a room, hit the drop-down button next to your name that says more, and it'll allow you to go back in.
Yes.
Perfect. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even aware of that feature. So I learned something today, which is nice. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to close down all the breakout rooms. And what it will do is you'll get a message on your screen that tells you to rejoin the main room. And you either click on that or wait 60 seconds, and it'll automatically put you back in the main room. So when you see that button pop up, go ahead and click it. Opa, everybody's back. So that's basically the a quick run through of the feature for breakout rooms. It is a really, really important tool, I believe, for mediations. And again, I think Lisa Hadam's idea of opening up 3 rooms rather than 2 is a really awesome idea. And Anne's idea, and to be honest with you, Anne, I didn't even know about that. that you can schedule your rooms as you're scheduling a conference is also something to look for in your settings, which is also a really nice idea. So a lot of this is really setting these things up ahead of time. And again, you know, in computer speak, there's the rule of 5. You have to know how to do 5 things on any computer program. Once you get those 5 things down, then you're fine. You'll be able to use the vast majority of the functionality of the program once you learn how to do those 5 things. So let's talk a little bit. Melanie, was there something else you want to talk about before we moved on to other issues?
No, we'll cover some of the tips just on making things move more smoothly in a little bit. So
Okay.
whatever you think is helpful at this point is.
Well, really, at this point, if we're in a mediation, you know, that we would all be typically involved in. At this point, I would say we're close to an agreement. We're drafting things up. So let's talk about how you draft things up. Really, the easiest way to do that, and I know Anne's had a little bit of a different experience. We discussed that a couple of days ago. It all depends on what the setup is for the parties. And it all depends on, as a mediator, who you like to have draft those things. You know, personally, I leave it up to the parties, whether the district or district's counsel or the parent or parent's attorney or advocate wants to draft it up. As long as the parties all agree, then I'm fine. If not, what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'll draft it up. Everybody can watch what we're doing. The easiest way to do that is for whomever is going to draft the agreement to go to the button here which says share screen. So you'll share your screen, and when you share a screen, it'll pop up with screen, whiteboard, or iPhone, iPad. You want to choose screen, and then you want to hit share. So what everybody is going to see now, I'm assuming, is the Winter Wonderland scene, as everybody calls it. My wife took that picture in the Grand Tetons a couple of years ago. So what I would do at this point is, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what I would do at this point is I would go to whatever I use to draft up documents in. So for instance here, I would pull up Word as an app. It'll go into the app.
John, I'm just seeing you. I'm not seeing a Word document.
Oh, okay. How about now?
Is anybody else seeing a Word document, or is that just me?
Yes, the
I
word.
see it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And Melanie, I apologize.
Oh, I was on full screen. That was my glitch.
That's why.
So then what you would do is you would go into a Word document. I won't go through the whole process of it, but you can pull up whatever document you want, whether it's a pre-prepared mediation template, and then fill it in with input from the parties. So for instance, if I were drafting up a blank document here, we'll call it the Smith mediation. As I go through and we start going through terms, the parties can see me, the parties can hear me, I can hear all the parties. So really, on behalf of the district, I would say, you know, does the district have any terms they want to put in here? And you would give me whatever terms you would want to give me. And then Melanie, let's go to the parent. You're the parent advocate. Does the parent's advocate agree to the terms that the district's asking for?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so with that back and forth, you are then able to draft up the document. Once you've got the document drafted up, then the question becomes, how do you get it to the parties? And how do you get the parties to sign it? That becomes a little bit of a personal preference. And I know in speaking with Sherry and Ann and Willie and everyone that we've been working with here in Illinois, there are a couple of different ways to do that. And I think a lot of that's going to be dependent upon, in my opinion, primarily the parent's technological capabilities. In general, in the mediations that I've done on Zoom, the parent usually has the technological disadvantage in that they don't have equipment as available or as good as the district does for, you know, for budgetary reasons. So I try to, when it comes time to change documents around, I try to make it as untechnological as possible. So what I've done in some mediations is I will take that document, make it into a PDF, and the easiest thing to do is to email that to the party. And then The parties, most everybody has the ability to pull up a PDF on their email. I had a parent once do it on her smartphone if she was sitting there. And then ask the parties to go through the document. Once everybody is in agreement, the question then becomes, how do you get signatures? This is where it starts to depend a little bit on personal preference and what your own technological capabilities are. I do my stuff through DocuSign, which is a separate standalone program that you need to, much like Zoom, you have to subscribe to it. I use it in my law practice, so I'm pretty familiar with it. What DocuSign allows you to do is to pull up a PDF document and assign places for the different parties to sign, and then DocuSign emails it out to them. They sign it electronically, and then once all the parties have signed, I get a message from DocuSign that says, all the parties have signed, here's a completed copy of the document. The nice thing about DocuSign, besides getting people the ability to have people sign it right away, is it automatically sends a copy of the document that has been signed once it's fully executed to all of the parties. Other ways to do that, and if you guys want to jump in with ways that you've done it, that would be great. Again, is to email documents out to the parents and the district, and then ask the parties to print those documents out and sign them. And then, again, going with the lowest common denominator, if you can tell the parents, look, just take a picture of the signature page. That works for us. We've got your signature. We'll include it in what we send in Illinois. We upload all of our documents to the SEM system that the State Board of Education has. That would be sufficient to put together with the documents when I upload them to show that the parent has agreed. The district is usually doesn't have those problems. They can usually sign and scan and send it back. I'll open it up to the group as far as getting folks to sign documents. What are your experience in getting documents out to the parties and getting them back?
John, if I may weigh in, I did a practice session with you and Kim, and you recall in that I adopted the method Kim had suggested, which is a legal signature. And also I think you had talked about signing it yourself, asking permission. So when you pull up the document, let's say the first document we have, mediation record, you put the slash. I'm in control of the document. I pull it up. This is a mediation record you've just signed in. May I sign your name? I put a slash, the S slash, and I type the person's name, and I do that for everyone who is on it, and my understanding that's perfectly legal. Then my computer allows me to immediately send a copy of that, email it to the parties. And the same with mediation record. The reason I mention it, because I went over it with you and Kim, we discussed it, I believe, in our training session with ISBE. Sounds like it's perfectly legal and allowable, and it is frankly the easiest. I've signed up for DocuSign, but I first want to do a tutorial before I try it.
Yeah, and there's actually a federal law that controls electronic signatures that specifically allows that. So from a legal perspective, not licensed in all 50 states, only Illinois, but speaking as an Illinois lawyer, that would be a binding signature, would make a binding contract. And I think that's a great suggestion, what Anna's talking about, and what Kim Kern, another one of our mediators, does, is as she's drafting the documents, when you get to the signature line, if everybody is in agreement, asking each side, if I have your permission, I will type your name in as your signature. And they say, yes, you can do that. And then you put an S with a slash and you type their name in. That would be a binding legal signature under federal law. So that's—
Say that again.
What you can do is, as you're drafting the document, you would put in the signature line, you would put the letter S with a slash, and then literally type in, say, Melanie Reese. Melanie is for the parent. Type in the parent's name right there, or the district's, the district superintendent's name. That becomes a legal binding signature under federal law. So that is a real, for lack of a better word, a quick and dirty way to get those signatures. I know as mediators, I hate having parties leave the mediation without having a signed document, because every time I've ever done that, I've been doing mediation, different types of mediation for 20 years, it always falls apart. because people are going to go back and talk to their lawyers and think about it. So it's really important to try and get that signature on the documents before everybody leaves the mediation. So that's another way, as Ann suggests, a good way.
Again, John, you say that's a, John, excuse me, is that a forward slash and then an S?
You do an S and then a forward slash.
Okay.
In federal court, federal courts have been taking documents for the last 20 years by electronic signature. In the federal courts, that's what they use in federal court. When I submit something to court, I don't sign my name. I S/ and I type my name in, and that's a binding signature for the purposes of the federal rules of civil procedure.
So I do need to jump in on behalf of Cadre, and the purpose of this this presentation is not to provide legal advice. And your mileage may vary in your particular state. So please consult your local legal counsel for any legal questions.
And thank you, Melanie. Yes, that's why I'm only licensed in Illinois. I'm not giving anybody legal advice, but you may want to check on that. You know, with whoever your legal advisor is in whatever state you have to be.
And John, I think what we've done in addition to that is Kim and Lisa, I believe, have asked the parent who doesn't have scanning capability to send an email and say, yes, I approve, I've read the waiver, I agree to allow you to sign my name, and then they keep that email from the parent as part of the record. And Lisa's dealing with a parent right now that doesn't have email. And so that mediation, I think, is set for a week or so out. So she is going to be mailing the waiver document and the sign-in sheet to that parent, and then having her mail it back, including a stamped envelope. I'm not sure what she's going to do with the actual agreement should they reach. There are challenges with this. So
there are definitely challenges with this, and what Sherry points out, the first mediation I did, we had some issues with that, and that's exactly what we did. Is I emailed the parent the document and then asked her to send me an email back saying, yes, I agree to this, and that worked out in that situation. Randy, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In your work as a mediator, how do you deal with that issue of signatures?
Well, I haven't done a lot of mediation that wasn't face-to-face, but we've used Adobe documents, the electronic signature on Adobe, for people who are out of town when we've done mediations in court, like over the phone.
Yeah, and Adobe, for those of you who don't know, Adobe Sign is basically, it's the Adobe version of DocuSign. And since Adobe basically controls the market for PDFs, most people, when they deal with PDFs, are using an Adobe product. That's also a good thing to have, because that's well integrated with the Adobe products that are out there as well. Anybody else have any comments before we move on? We're all good? Okay. Melanie, I'm going to throw it back to you then. I don't know what you want to talk about next. We've talked a little bit about some of those issues.
All right, I will share my screen. And so since we have our esteemed group here, let me get this set up here. I thought we'd throw it out for just any kind of discussion topics to the larger group. At the current time, in April 2020, there have been some concerns with Zoom and security issues. And I thought we might take a moment to talk about that in some more detail. One of the concerns is that there have been people who have not been invited to the Zoom meeting jumping into the Zoom meeting without permissions. And there have been some questions of whether that's a user error in terms of setting up the meeting, or whether or not that's something that is inherently a problem with Zoom. So I'd love to hear any weigh-in on security concerns and whether or not the password or registration of the meeting mitigates that concern.
What I'll say is this: in my experience, it's generally because of operator error. As Ann said, when she sets up a meeting, She's setting up with password protections. You can also require participants to register. Zoom is encrypted end-to-end, which means what goes from here to the other side before you see me is encrypted. So it's actually fairly difficult to jump into something. At least in my experience, a lot of the issues that people have been having with that have been because they're, the New York City school system, they were using an open platform and just making it an open meeting that anyone could join. So people, of course, were surfing around Zoom looking for meetings that they could join and then jumping in and doing nefarious things. The easiest thing to do in that situation is to password protect your meeting, and then also, if you like, require your registrants to register to actually attend the meeting. That way you've got control over who gets in and who gets out. The other thing that's important to note is Zoom came out, I believe, just last night with an update, and they fixed some of the security concerns that have been swirling around out there. So something else to remember when you do this is to regularly update your application, because that will give you, just like Microsoft, they put out security patches. Apple does that all the time as they find security flaws. Zoom is updating their software on an ongoing basis. So it's just a good idea to get into the habit of updating your application once a week or going and checking to make sure. It's relatively painless to do, and that way you'll have whatever security concerns are out there. They tend to be dealing with those things.
John, on the meeting I was in last night, when we signed in, we went into a waiting room, and then they had to let us in one by one.
Yes, and that's a feature that you can set up on Zoom as well. If you go into your settings, the same place that Melanie had shown us, that you go into check off, password and registration and stuff. As you scroll down in those settings, it also allows you to make it an automatic setting that no one is allowed to join the meeting. They wait in the waiting room until the host lets them in. Most of my meetings, I didn't set this meeting up like that, but when I set it up for mediation, I will always click that button and require the participants to wait in the waiting room, because then again, it would be, if you scroll down, you don't have it on your screen, Melanie?
I don't have it on my screen.
Yep, but actually what you just had up is the same screen that you would scroll down to in order to find that toggle switch. And the nice thing with Zoom is it's all run by toggle switches. It's yes or no, it's on and off. There's not a lot of, you don't have to program it or put in URLs or anything like that. But Randy, that's an excellent idea, is to make everyone wait in the meeting room, and you can set that up in your settings as you're setting your meeting.
And just to add, I haven't had a great experience, but like John, I feel that people were having just these Zoom meetings. They were using not a secure way of having their meeting. That's probably what caused a lot of the problem. But even in the things I've been practicing, I'm doing all of those things because I signed up for Zoom Pro. You have to register, password. There is a waiting room. Everyone goes in the waiting room. Everyone is muted before I start talking. Everyone is still muted. I let them know beforehand so they're not startled or surprised. But I also will, I think we'll add one other thing when I'm now setting these up, saying to people, if by any chance all of these security measures don't work and somebody jumps in, I can immediately end the meeting, correct, John? I've got my end meeting. I will let people know in advance. I will immediately end the meeting, and that we should all wait 5 or 10 minutes and then come back in.
Yeah, and then so you can always, as the host, and I'll show you on the screen real quick, the participants, of course, can't see my screen. If you look down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a button for end the meeting. You can always end the meeting. If things really go south, and you have to take care of something, you can always tell everyone, we're going to end the meeting, and we're going to rejoin in another 5 minutes. Something else to also think about when you're when you're the host is when you click on Manage Participants, and you'll see it on the screen there. All of my participants pop up. I can throw a participant out if, for instance, Randy is getting to be an issue. I can hit chat. Because that on Randy to be an issue. What you can do is you can stop that person's video, you can mute them, you can put them in the waiting room, or you can hit remove. And once you remove a participant, they will not be able to rejoin the meeting until you start a new meeting. So when you remove a participant, removal is forever. You can't remove them and have them come back in. They're simply kicked out of the meeting and they're unable to rejoin.
You just keep that in mind, Randy.
Yes, and John, isn't there a function where you can lock a meeting so no one else can join?
Yes, and that's also once all of your participants are in, and that requires the participants to register, that once all of your participants are in, the meeting is locked and no one else can come into the meeting. That's something you would also set up in your settings in Zoom when you're setting up the meeting. And again, it's just a quick toggle bar. That's also something you can do if you're really looking to make things secure. I'll be honest with you, I tend not to use that function only because in a couple of mediations, I've had a situation where the district has said, hey, you know what? Let me get Jenny Smith on the line. She's she's from CEDAW, and let's see if they've got any openings. If you lock a meeting, I wouldn't be able to let that participant in. What I may be able to do in that situation is to send them an invite, wait for them to check their email, and they could jump into the meeting. It gets a little clunky, but I would leave it to everybody's discretion as far as what you think is. I've never, quite honestly, I've never had an issue with a meeting other than setting up the password and requiring people to register. I've never been Zoom bombed. Now that I've said that, it's going to happen next week, I'm sure. Of course. And it'll be you, Randy, right?
No, it won't be. I promise.
Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about as far as security, or do you want to move on to the next topic?
What would you do if, someone just walks into the screen?
Well, that gets to that next question of ensuring confidentiality. How do you ensure that the people who are at the meeting are the people that are supposed to be at the meeting, and there's not somebody off screen that comes in? Or how do you maintain confidentiality in a virtual world?
And on this one, Sherry, I'm going to unmute you real quick. Or if you can unmute yourself, Sherry, I'd like you to talk about this a little bit, if you can.
Okay. We talked about this in training to ensure that confidentiality piece. Of course, we already have a confidentiality agreement that the parties sign before mediation starts, but we provided some language for the mediators to talk to the parties again to reassure that you are guaranteeing that you are in the room by yourself. This is confidential. No one else is privy to the conversation. Will not walk into the room. If you wanted to invite anybody else, you can certainly let me know. We can invite that person and invite them if appropriate. And we also do, in our language, talk about there is no recording of this mediation session. And we have that too, even if it was face-to-face. You're not going to record the mediation session by any electronic means, by your little smartphone in front of you, anything. And that's how we are addressing the confidentiality piece.
Willie, did I address your concern?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and I think and Sherry raises a really good point with the medium that we're working with here. You can't see what's in the rest of my room here. So you don't know if the parties have someone standing in the back, or the parent has their spouse or significant other, wandering in and out of the room while the district is talking about something that is covered by FERPA. So it really becomes an issue, and I think Sherry's suggestion of just making sure all the parties understand that the issues of confidentiality, nobody else can be in the room, is a really good way to start a meeting. I think it's critical.
It could be a first step in building trust too.
I'm sorry, Randy.
I didn't hear you, broke up.
Oh, it's one of those first ways that we build trust when people make minor agreements to hold things confidential. That's the beginning.
Sure, absolutely, and that's and as mediators, trust is everything. And, if you get the parent to feel like you're being fair and impartial to both sides, you'll come to a successful resolution. If you get somebody who feels like you don't trust them or they don't trust you, you're absolutely right, Randy. You're dead in the water before you even start. Any other issues on confidentiality for anyone?
Well, I have a friend who does group counseling sessions on Zoom right now, because they had to stop. And so she makes everybody verbally agree on screen.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That they will not, that no one else can hear this, and that they will keep it confidential.
Huh. That's an outstanding idea. I never would have thought of that. Huh. I'm going to have to start using that. One thing as far as confidentiality.
I'll give you my mailing address so you can send the check.
To the therapist, Randy?
No, I stole that legally.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have to get a check from ISBE first, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something about confidentiality that I may want to mention is we're recording this. Only the host has the ability to record unless the other side requests permission to do so. But that doesn't stop, and I've had this in situations where parents want to record the mediation. I've gotten that in staffings, I've gotten that in mediations, I've gotten that in arbitrations. So that's the other thing that you'll need to make sure everyone understands is you can't record this on your own. This is all confidential. So it's there are definitely some challenges in doing it in this format. Anybody have anything else on that?
John, I actually just wanted to add that as mediators in our opening, we always go over confidentiality as in the traditional mediation in person. And so we have to, I know it's a little more challenging in this forum, but it is the same requirements as when we're doing it in person, that nobody's going to share anything with anyone.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, obviously, the mediation agreement can be used to be enforced, but that's different. But yeah. It really is the similar principle.
Oh, and Shirley, if I'm not mistaken, I think you updated our documents, and that's recording or something, if I recall correctly, is part of that, correct?
What part of the documents? I mean, we've always had that there will be no recording at all of the mediation session.
Okay, that's
and yes, our documents did get updated, but it might have just been made more clear in this last revise. So.
But I think that's also something that we can use is, it's you signed a document, you signed a confidentiality agreement that includes not reporting this. Of course, what your remedy is,
right? Yeah, that's
a little more challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
that's the confidentiality agreement. Yep.
Yep. Anybody have anything else on that, Melanie?
No, that's the primary question that folks had is how to ensure confidentiality with people walking in and out of rooms or recording. So the teams addressed that. Very good.
Well, and and one thing that you may want to consider doing if you do a lot of this stuff, I have basically a dedicated space. I'm not actually sitting in a library full of books. I wish I had a library full of books. I'm actually sitting in front of a green screen, and I'll turn that off very briefly so everybody can see what that looks like. So I'm really sitting in front of a green screen in my home office. The reason why I do that, there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think it makes it more private. I've got a dedicated space. My wife knows, when I'm working, the door is closed, keep the dogs and all that stuff out. And two, I also find it kind of distracting when people are broadcasting things from their house, because you tend to look at, what's that picture behind your head, or oh look, that person was in a 5K race last year. It gets a little distracting. So just as a personal preference, I tend to use a virtual background because and I've got a dedicated space for this because it does make things more confidential, rather than doing it in my living room with my wife and the dogs running back and forth in the back or something like that. So, but that's my own personal preference.
Are you able to just quickly tell us how to do that? I can always do a tutorial
Sure, absolutely. I can just show you very briefly. If you look on your lower left-hand corner of the screen, where it says the.
Let me stop sharing, and I think that that might help.
Oh,
because is everybody seeing everybody speak, or are they only seeing my slides?
I'm seeing both.
Okay. Well, then I don't need
Seeing
to
both.
stop sharing. Okay.
yeah, and I've got you. I've got everybody on the right-hand side of my screen. So if you look in the
Okay.
lower left-hand corner where it says Stop Video, there's a drop-up button. And if you click on that, it says Video Settings, and then also Choose Virtual Background. If you click on Choose Virtual Background, that's going to allow you to choose whatever background you want to use. There are a couple of backgrounds that come pre-installed. That's the Golden Gate Bridge, if I'm not mistaken. You can change your background to a tropical island breeze. Or the other thing that you can do is there's a plus button that allows you to add an image from your photos. So you can go to, you know, for instance, just Google, I got this background by Googling virtual library background and putting that into my photos and then importing that from my photos into the Zoom application. So you can really use whatever background you want. You don't need a green screen if you've got a blank wall that doesn't have anything on it. That works just as well. I just happen to have a green screen because my wife's a photographer. So.
Since we have kind of moved into tips and challenges, any other tips that folks who have done this kind of work can offer?
Well, I'd offer one. I think lighting is pretty important.
And I agree with you.
In the meeting we had last night, one of the guys was in a hotel room and he had a lamp on the desk below him and it lit him from below and it looked like he was doing horror stories on the camping.
The flashlight under his chin.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a really good point. I look at these things, you know, from my wife's perspective, because that's what she does. Light is what she does all day long. So in the space that I'm at, why I keep a dedicated space is I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lights that are arranged so that I'm well lit. And I think that helps when you're working with parties. If they're having trouble seeing you, if you're kind of dark or, you know, half your face is in shadow, that becomes distracting. So I think having, you know, being aware of what you look like, starting the meeting ahead of time and starting your video so you see what you look like. So if you're half in shadow or, you know, you've got something on your back wall that's really distracting, you can do something about it. But the lighting's a really important issue from my perspective, because I think you're right, Randy. It becomes distracting, and you've got the parties who are not concentrating on what you're trying to get done.
I also feel that, you know, in mediation, it's important that we set up a safe space for the participants. And this can be a very nerve-wracking environment for people to be on camera. And Ann had talked earlier about having a meeting ahead of time with each person just to kind of practice. I think you had said something like that. And it might be a good opportunity to sit with them and say, well, you know, let's meet on screen and help reduce some of those anxieties that they have by giving them some tips on maybe setting up a couple of lights at 45-degree angles in front of you so you're lit from both sides. This also helps because it increases my ability to read your nonverbals. For example, Willie, it's hard for me to see your facial expressions because you're a little bit dark. So I would probably encourage you to add a little light, and I would encourage Melanie to reduce her lighting a little bit because it kind of washes out her features. He's a little bright.
Well, and that's an excellent point. For instance, I've got my laptop. I'm doing this from my laptop. I have my laptop raised about 6 inches off of my desk because if not, what you tend to get is that kind of that nose shot. You know, if you're coming into the screen and you're like this, all everybody is going to see is the inside of your nose, which after a while gets distracting. So yeah, I encourage people to start the meeting up ahead of time, look at yourself and just see how you look. I think Randy raises just an excellent point in that as mediators, if people trust you, You know, if you look confident, you're in control, and they build that relationship with you, and that feeling of, hey, this person's really good. I really trust this person. That makes or breaks your mediation. You have a parent who's already skittish about the technology and then can't see half of your face. I think Randy raises a great point. You're not building those bridges of trust. You're not building the connections that you need to make with people because they're being distracted by the technological things.
Any other tips from the panel?
Well, if you don't mind, I got another one that I was thinking of, is that I think it's easier for people to avoid empathy over technology like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we see it on Facebook, for example. People say things on Facebook to people that they wouldn't say face to face. And that's because I don't think we're as empathetic with a two-dimensional picture in front of us as we are with someone who's in a room with us. So I think as mediators, we have to really go into our toolkit and dig out those empathy building exercises and try to facilitate that with words, what we can't have happen when people are face to face and we can read our nonverbals, you know, get those vibes that we get in a room that we don't get online.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point. And Willie, let me ask you a question, because you've been doing this for a long time. Do you find that this is going to hamper your ability as a mediator to do your job because you're not getting those nonverbal cues? You're not with the parties. You can't see their body language. How do you feel this impacts your mediations?
No, I don't think it's going to hamper. I think once after like 5 or 10 minutes, the parties will feel a little comfortable in coming forward. You know, it's the way that I introduce everyone and the way that I present the process, and I'll smile. And it kind of relaxes the people in the mediation. And I could see them exhale, and then I just go forward with the process. And that's what has worked for me for over 30 some odd years.
Outstanding. And I think that's important. And what about you? And you've had some experience with this so far. How do you think this is going to affect what you're doing?
I really think it's going to work very well. I agree. I'm glad Randy brought up this issue about empathy. I'm glad Willie added what he did. Is I do tend to use a smile also, Willie, to help relax people. And as you know, I just did my Zoom meeting last night, which was prior to my Zoom mediation, which will occur next week. And a lot of that was to see, could people be comfortable? They were comfortable. They were able to speak to me. At first, I just did want to mention one thing. When I email beforehand that I'm sending people the invitation, I say, do not forward this email. Let me know if you want to invite people to this mediation. I will send them an email, but don't forward. And that's kind of back in our security, etc. I think this is going to work very well. I really do. I don't see any impediment.
Okay, great, thank you. And what I'll do at this point, I know we're sort of getting towards the end here, so I'm going to throw it back to Melanie. And Melanie, thank you for the opportunity to go through this stuff. I think it's going to be really, really helpful. I appreciate all the hard work that you've done and everything that Sherry's done to get us to this point.
So there's a lot more to cover. There's a lot more information out there, and Cadre wants to be able to facilitate these kind of conversations, and we couldn't do it without you. I know that there are other platforms that are being utilized in doing online mediation and online facilitation, for that matter. GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar are both two different platforms. I've heard of others as well, and we're going to try to find folks out there who can demonstrate these other types of platforms. I do want to highlight that Sherry sent me some information that she received from the Special Education Mediation Services out of Michigan. And Sherry, just to clarify, all three of these items that I have here were from that group. But
Right.
And I believe you also you alluded to this earlier, that we have some additional resources to share. One is on virtual meeting setup, one is on participant tips for virtual meetings, and then a checklist to video conferencing. And these three documents we will host on the same website where we are going to be putting this presentation. So we will make sure that these materials are also available for download for everybody. So Sherry, thank you for forwarding those and for all of the work that we have. Just to plug Cadre for just a moment. Cadre has a lot of resources on mediation, on facilitation, on improving skills, on conflict resolution, and the entire gamut of the dispute resolution options available to school districts and to parents. So please feel free to check out our main library to find information. Here's the link. And with that, again, heartfelt thanks for your time and your energies to put this together. So many, many thank yous.
Thank you, Melanie. Have a good day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.